Those people have so much power because they've been taking a piece of everybody's action for so long. The difference in wealth, they're inconceivable. Reaches the level of, hey, quit playing me. Get off of my blue suede shoes now. Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. Good evening to you. David Penn, your host. Glad to be with you. Episode number 168. We're going to talk about the terrorists among us. Hope you had a good Christmas. Tonight is the 26th of December, Thursday night, the day after that hallowed and holy day. For many of us, it's still the holidays. It is a time for reflection, to change pace, to take it easy, I guess, might be one way of saying it. And then for some of us, the holidays are very, very emotionally troubling, which I also think is a good thing. But it's an interesting time of the year. I don't know what it's like for you, Tanner. Good morning to you.
Good morning, David.
But I just want to share for me. I go so hard. I was telling Tanner before we started, I go so hard throughout the year. I have so many things going on. Then you hit the holidays, and there's really nothing that, if you're type A personality like me, I just got to say there's nothing to do because everybody has taken it easy, which is great for me because I get to take it easy too. And I need the break. So we're going to be talking about a very serious subject tonight, which is the terrorists among us. But if I drop into some levity, it's not that I'm giving short shrift to the topic. It's just, it's the holidays.
It's the holidays.
Right?
Gotta kick
Cannot
back
be
a little
super intense every single day. I gotta mix it up a little bit, and that's what I do this time of the year. I want to feel some joy. I want to share some joy. I'm glad Tanner he told me before the break he had a good Christmas.
bit.
I had a good Christmas. It was cool. But there's just some of these issues that I want to talk about. I'm trying to figure out how can you make this funny. Can you play this first clip on the interrogation?
Have you ever stood and stared at it, marveled at its beauty, its genius? Billions of people just living out their lives, oblivious. Did you know that the first Matrix was designed to be a perfect human world where none suffered, where everyone would be happy? It was a disaster. No one would accept the program. Entire crops were lost. Some believed that we lacked the programming language to describe your perfect world, but I believe that as a species, human beings define their reality through misery and suffering. So the perfect world was a dream that your primitive cerebrum kept trying to wake up from. Which is why the Matrix was redesigned to this, the peak of your civilization. And I say your civilization because as soon as we started thinking for you, it really became our civilization, which is, of course, what this is all about. Evolution, Morpheus. Evolution. Like the dinosaur. Look out that window. You had your time. The future is our world, Morpheus. The future is our...
That's good, Tanner. Thank you very much. Wow. That's 1999. That seems to be a rather poignant and appropriate clip as we focus on war in the Ukraine, war in the Middle East, conflict in the South China Sea, economic collapse, epidemics, pandemics, and all of that is also important. The destruction of our families, falling birth rates. We just go on and on with all the things that I'm tracking that keep my mind focused on everything but what matters. And what matters is that scene. That's the iconic scene from The Matrix, 1999, where Agent Smith has Morpheus under lock and key. It's an interrogation scene. And Agent Smith takes that moment to share his feelings about things as he's about to torture Morpheus to get the information that he wants. But he's in a sharing mood. You know, something about sadism can lead to a kind of intimacy. And what he says is that as soon as we, the people, gave up our ability to think for ourselves, and the machines, the supercomputers, started to think for us, as soon as we gave up our self governance and took the shiny baubles of convenience, our time was over. We were talking about that on the last episode, weren't we?
Yeah.
That might be why I played that clip. You haven't seen that before, have you?
No. Is this from the original Matrix?
For number one, numero uno, yes, 1999, 25 years ago, people knew that this was going to go down. We're sitting here with all these news issues that we're going to cover tonight because that's what we do. And the only news that really matters is we are about to be replaced because it's evolution after all, isn't it? We're going to let loose into the universe a superintelligence that is spawned of our depravity. And then we expect it to bring us a benefit. Or the salespeople that tell us it's all good in the hood are telling us how much we're going to gain from this, how it's going to transform human life. It's going to improve human life, almost in kind of a utopian way. You know, diseases solved, crises that we have been unable to solve as human beings, addressed by this superintelligence. It's supposed to think for itself by 2025, I read. Have you read that?
What is?
Artificial intelligence,
It's supposed to think for itself.
2025.
Yeah, I call BS.
You call BS on that?
Yeah, I think it's a fairy tale that we think that technology can just think for itself. It's just using information that we fed it.
So you are not a proponent of this superintelligence becoming self-aware or developing some kind of its own independent consciousness.
No, I don't believe that.
You don't.
No, I think that for humans we are similar in that way that we really are just what we're fed, but there is also like a human spirit where that computer is lacking that entirely. It's only ever going to do what it's programmed to do. So if I programmed it to be down is up and up is down, it would think that. And no matter what kind of like pretty face it puts on, it's not a true consciousness because it's just thinking about.
Okay, so what's if it's not truly conscious, since you're young and tech savvy,
Yeah.
if it's not truly conscious, does it have a threat to us?
Oh, definitely.
And
It's a tool. It's like the internet. It's not itself. It's not bad, but it can be used for bad.
So there's agency, human agency, directing this superintelligence.
Yeah, that's what I believe.
That's your
I
belief.
could be wrong. I could be wrong, but I truly believe that it's just a computer at the end of the day, and it's only as good as what we put into it.
You know, I don't know either.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
think
scary.
anybody knows where we're heading with this stuff. But what we do know is that we're dependent as the American people on processes we don't understand. We talk about the primitives and the decadents. The primitive man could carry everything that he needed to survive on his belt. The belts that we wear, they were actually tool belts. I mean, there's really no reason to keep your pants up, right? It's a scam. It's a holdover from a time where you'd have a string or some, a belt around your waist where you kept your hatchet, for example, your knife, whatever you needed to get your business done during the day. That's what it was, a tool belt. We don't have that anymore. We don't know how to do anything anymore,
Mm-mm.
right?
Yeah.
That is the greatest problem, and not a political issue. That's a cultural issue. The issue would be, how do we start to walk back into self-governance? And
Yeah.
I do have a theory about this. My theory about it is the place you walk back is first to search for truth. In other words, just be honest. Be honest with yourself. Forget about other people. I try to start by being honest with myself. My despair that I talked about in the last episode came from running into some of my own limits. And when you're younger and you reach a limit, you go, how do I extend past this limit? But when you get older and you hit a limit, you go, am I hitting the maximum operational efficiency of my machine? Can I go no further? And that created kind of a despair. But the training that I advocate and that I've talked about, just the importance of knowing how to breathe, reclaiming very fundamental elements of humanity that are no longer taught. Tanner, do they teach you how to breathe when you're going to high school these days? They have a class on breathing?
I remember learning how to breathe for swimming when I was in a small little swimming segment in gym class. I remember they taught us how to properly breathe, but that was more for, strategy of swimming.
What did they tell you to do?
Belly breathe. Oh, now that you're mentioning it, choir. My choir teacher taught me. It was belly breathing. Kind of breathing with your whole diaphragm. You're just dropping your gut and allowing the air to go in.
You see, the information is there. It's just hidden in the secret society of chorus.
Yeah, choir.
Your choir teacher taught you, because you really can't sing if you're all high up in the chest and tight in the shoulders. You have to hold a note. You got to belly breathe. I actually do a prayer where I vibrate my vocal cords for as long as I can. Dare I say, sometimes it can go for a very long time. That's that belly breathing concept. In The Matrix, there's a scene, which we've played, where Morpheus looks at Neo and he says, do you think that's air you're breathing in here? That's the idea of belly breathing. There's something actually in belly breathing that's supernatural. Did you ever hit the supernatural edge of belly breathing?
Like through meditation sometimes, yeah.
Like you can just hold a breath, it seems like forever.
Yeah.
Have
Like
you
your
experienced
lungs
that?
are endless. It
Yes.
feels like you can keep pulling.
The air just keeps coming in and circulating through your body.
Yeah.
See what happens when you have a hunter in the room? They have to control their heartbeat. Do you try to shoot in between the heartbeats when you pull that
I don't
trigger?
time it that well, but I focus on my breathing really well and I squeeze the trigger on an exhale. Is how I'll always do it. I'll slowly exhale, and with that exhale, I'll squeeze.
I think that's so cool. You see, if you do something real, like hunting, you're forced to develop your human capabilities. So as I walk back towards self-governance, yeah, what am I supposed to do? Start a 3-acre garden tomorrow and take care of it? No, that's not what most of us can do. But what can we do? That's the question, because the real issue of the day is the artificiality of the world that we're living in. It's stripping us of our essential human capabilities, making us subject to control. That's the whole game that's going on here. So I'm going to go off and talk about all these, very potent and important um, critical events, but none of them really are the critical event. Like, for example, debt. Here's a great one, debt. As of this moment, the sovereign governments of the world, I'm not talking about individual debt, I'm talking about sovereign governments, what they call global public debt, is reaching, as we end this year, you'll like this number, it's $102 trillion, an increase of $5 trillion just from 2023. Debt levels are projected to increase faster than previously expected as government policies fail to address debt risks amid aging populations and increasing healthcare costs. Going further, rising geopolitical tensions could lead to higher spending on defense, adding strain to government budgets. Debt. Debt is an interesting concept. Debt is something that doesn't exist. It's a figment of my imagination. Like if I say, Tanner, I owe you $20. It's not real. It's a promise to pay.
Yeah.
It's pretty artificial, isn't it?
I guess for me, I would trust that you'd give me that $20.
But
So,
I'm just saying, until I frog it up and give you a piece of paper and
oh
you
yeah,
convert that paper to something tangible, it's a very artificial concept. The concept of debt. The concept of debt, which is prohibited in the Old Testament, it's a sin to charge interest. And in fact, in the Old Testament, the one that most people don't read, well, most people don't read the New Testament either, do they?
yeah, not too many.
That's very interesting. The Old Testament has a concept called the Jubilee, which after a certain period of time, everyone's debts are forgiven. In other words, the framers of the Old Testament knew that from time to time, I needed 20 to get to my next paycheck. Can you give me 20 till my next paycheck? We've heard that before, right?
Yeah,
Right? As a long-term owner of a business, I stopped carrying cash many decades ago because when you're around people that work for you, they always say, could I have 100 till the next pay period? Hey, I don't have the money. I'm just being frank. This is what happens when you have a good heart. But the concept of debt is prohibited, and we could get into a long dissertation of why it seems that Jewish people are so good with debt. I'm not, but it seems like culturally Jewish people occupy a lot of roles in the banking system, yet it's prohibited. It's prohibited. So something has changed. Now, Islam also prohibits debt. It prohibits pornography, gambling, drinking, prostitution. All the good businesses where all the money is are prohibited in traditional culture. Did you know that?
no, I mean it sounds nice, but aren't they the ones that also just treat their women like?
That's another issue. That's a different issue, okay? It's not the same thing. And let us not discredit prohibitions against profiting from people's shortcomings. I don't want to prohibit, I don't want to preclude the good things because we can find some things we don't like.
Yeah,
We want to look at those good, and we've given that up. We've given that up so extremely. And we accept this. I mean, a big part of the terrorists among us, that debt is to me, a terroristic kind of manipulation of the people. I mean, most of us have some kind of debt, and that debt hangs over us. I'm still paying off student loan debt from my kids from 10 years ago. I've just never been able to make it go away, and the interest rate is so high. I'm just funding the government
Hmm.
for an extra whatever, $1,100 a month. It's crazy. I haven't had the money to pay that off. Many of us have these kind of debt obligations. Credit card debt, there's one. Why do we do this to ourselves? I mean, it's really a self-inflicted wound. Walking back into self-governance. I have a goal. I want to be out of debt. Now, there's many areas in my life where I've been successful in accomplishing that. So I'm looking at the other areas. How do I get out of debt? Why did I get into debt? I mean, I'm at the end of the road. I remember at the beginning of the road, it seems like, oh, this is a good idea. It's not a good idea. It's not. I told the story. It's worth telling again. My grandfather bought my first house my second house, 1981. It was $84,000 over in St. Paul. And my grandfather came to the house as like a housewarming thing. And he'd lived through the Great Depression. And he had a very clear personal philosophy about money, which I thought, then I was proud. I was, hey, come on over, Gramps, I want to show off. And he said, how much? He goes, my son, how much did you pay for this house? I said, 84,000. He said, I am so proud of you. You're only 20 years old. How did you save $84,000 so quickly? What did you do? And I said, well, no, Gramps, I didn't save 84,000. I saved 12,000 and I made a down payment and I got a mortgage. And at the time, this was the Carter administration. It was the Carter administration. I mean, I think the mortgage on the house was like 18 or 21%. It was crazy on the home. My grandfather looked at me and he just got up and he turned around and he walked out of the house, never came back. He never talked to me about it again. I mean, his attitude was, you're dumb. And, if you're young, I'm just going to tell you, don't borrow money. I mean, this is part of the self-governance thing, to get off this hamster wheel. I mean, how can we sit here and criticize the public debt when we're all personally in debt? So all it's doing is reflecting what we accept for ourselves. This is not correct. This is an incorrect thing. We accept a debt society. Now, I realize there's things I can't have. There's a lot I can't have. I make hey, when I start coming in and you see me in a new suit, because I quit wearing my old suits because they were getting old. I thought, man, I'm just gonna tone this down. And if God ever wants to bless me with material wealth again in my life, you see me in new suits, it's because, Free People Radio is starting to be self-sustaining, which again, thank you for reminding me, Tanner. Please, Target.com, the Free People store. I would like not to go broke doing this. We just like to get it to a break-even thing this year. So please, thank you for your support. But my point being, if you see me in a new suit, that means we're making a little bit of money. I can't afford a new suit right now. Now, obviously, if I want to go spend $1,000 on a suit, yeah, I can do it. But the cash flow, the money that's coming in, doesn't support me spending $1,000 on clothes. It just doesn't. In my opinion. It's my opinion. Now, somebody else could have a different opinion. They go out and buy a brand new Cadillac with what I'm taking in. I can't do it. I've reached that age where I just go, man, I got to be in balance. The outflow and the income got to be in balance. If we all had that idea that the outflow and the income had to be in balance, we might demand it of our elected representatives. Like, hey, balance the budget. What kind of a crazy, psychologically deficient, psychotic worldview enslaves all the people to massive public debt? And we accept it as if it's reality because we're in the matrix. We got credit cards. We got student loans. We got mortgages. We got auto loans. And we have public debt. All the people are enslaved to debt. The British business model of slavery, drugs, and piracy. The slavery part was changed from chattel slavery to machine slavery to debt slavery. It's been an evolution over hundreds of years. And, the British, the British were the first people, the people that started the slave trade, the modern Western slave trade. There's been slaves forever. There's still slaves all over the world. But the British made it into an industrial art. They took it to the highest level. They're not the only slavers. They were the best at it. And they were the first to let it go. They outlawed slavery first. And the idea was, whoa, here's how it got sold. They're so enlightened. They're Christians, after all. They recognized that slavery was illegitimate. I don't think so. I think the British got off slavery because the Industrial Revolution was happening, and they figured they could get more work out of machine slavery. than they could out of chattel slavery. Get people to take care of themselves with the illusion of freedom, and they'll work harder, and then we'll enslave them to debt. And that's where we are today, in a debt-slaved condition. All of us, $102 trillion of global debt. Now, when you have a loan, right,
Mm-hmm.
there's interest on the loan.
Yes, sir.
That's what induces the people that lend you the money to give it to you, because you're going to give them back more than they gave you. That's the inducement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who gets the money? Did we ever ask ourselves, that 102 trillion, who's holding that paper? Because they're the ones that benefit from the debt. Everybody else, yeah, well, you could say I paid off a house in 30 years. I paid $800,000 for a $275,000 house. Genius. I mean, come on. I got $100,000 of student loan debt I haven't been able to pay off. Thank you, kids. Merry Christmas to you, too.
Well, and what kind of sucks too, because I've seen it. I've been very lucky that the few loans that I have taken out, they haven't been bad. But I hear these horror stories of like my Camry when I got it and I got the loan for it. I think my interest rate was 2.5, and my friend just got a car, and they're down on their luck, don't have the best credit score, 19% interest rate. She can't keep up with her payments because every time they ask for a payment, it's pretty much paying just the interest. It's not even getting to the
That's what I've been
principal.
doing on my student loans. I'm just paying the interest.
Yeah, and it sucks because when you see it like that, you kind of realize that they're picking on the people that don't really know any better or don't have any other options. Because that friend that I'm talking about, they need a car. You need a car to work, and like the car they had completely crapped out on them, so they had to go get another car, and that was the only option they had.
So what are we talking about here? Excuse me. I start out with The Matrix, a scene where Agent Smith tells Morpheus, it's about evolution. It's about survival of the fittest. In a tradition that says love your neighbor as you wish to be loved, you wouldn't enslave that neighbor to an interest-only debt. And if you did, there'd be a jubilee where that slave could choose to be free, could choose freedom. They could also choose to maintain themselves as your slave. Isn't that interesting? But if you wanted to move the world in an evolutionary sense, where there was the survival of the fittest, and then what is the fittest? What does it mean? I would say the people that are collecting the interest on $102 trillion of debt, I think from a certain frame, they're pretty fit. They're very fit because they're getting all of the benefit of everything everybody does. And as I've been saying, much of this debt is denominated in dollars, which is why we are able here in the United States to be the debt leader. 35% of the world's global governmental debt is the $36 trillion that we here in the United States owe. And who do we owe it to? This is the kind of question. And then what is the implication of this? Because, of course, the scam is so deep, they just keep making more money. See, money, the idea of money is I create something of value and I trade it to you, and you give me something of value. But that's very cumbersome. So we have this medium of exchange, the US dollar, for example. So now we're not really trading directly. We're not bartering. There's a medium of exchange. Now the value of that medium plays into this game. So if the medium expands, if there's more and more of the medium, it's worth less and less also. So instead of me and you trading and you have something I want and I have something you want and we cut a deal, There's somebody else involved in there that's creating this convenient meat. We don't have to really discuss the trade. You just put a price on it. But now there's a third party involved. The third party that's controlling the supply of the medium of exchange. And if they create a lot of it, it's worth less, which means we have to change our calculations based on there's more of the medium of exchange. Somebody inserted themselves in there, a middleman. Now we understand what this is. There's a middleman on every transaction. Now that middleman should be us, we the people, because that dollar represents us. But it doesn't say my name on there, your name. It says a Federal Reserve note. So there's a broker in there on everything. That's evolution. Those people have so much power because they've been taking a piece of everybody's action for so long that the difference in wealth between those family lines and my family lines are almost they're inconceivable. And if you're getting mad at home, if this is angering you, that you're realizing that we've become inventory for the medium of exchange. The debt is the medium of exchange. It's not about the debt or the principal that was loaned. It's about the medium of exchange, the interest that is charged, which is expressly forbidden to charge interest. It's a sin. We're not supposed to charge interest. So our whole world structure is based not on the search for truth, but on the search for lies. Now, my politics is pretty darn radical, and I'm not expecting this entire world system to come undone because of me. Although if it did, I would certainly be happy if that happened. Because there's billions of us, and what we're doing here is we're saying we're going down this road, and it's the best for our health and well-being. It's the best that we got. But if we go down this road, another road, there's going to be all kinds of chaos and disease and famine. So we have this road we're on, this beautiful system, as Agent Smith said. Did you ever marvel at it, at its beauty, its complexity, our dependence upon it? That's its beauty and its complexity. It has managed to create a snare where we've all become trapped. So again, what do we do to walk back? What do we do to walk back? Well, breathing is an excellent place to start. That's something, if they can take that one away from you, hey, statistic, breathing, the art of breathing. I'm not going to go into it at great length today, but the art of breathing, it's an art form, just breathing. The entire martial experience involves breath. I mean, we see it when we watch football. You don't watch football, but when you see somebody go 95 miles at that speed, hey, they've mastered breathing because going 95 yards, not miles, yards at that speed it's miraculous, actually. It didn't just happen. In fact, we could line up 100 of our viewers and listeners and let's see, can we all run 100 yards? I mean, can you run flat out 100 yards? Fast as you can.
Yeah. I used to be in cross country though, so that's kind of unfair.
I can do it.
I want to see it.
I can do it. I can do it.
Let's pull it to the track after we're done recording this.
I can run 100 yards, no problem. But when you have this expansion, the brokers are expanding the supply of the medium of exchange, which creates inflation. Okay, now we're entering dangerous territory because food. This is how you really mess with people now. You make food scarce and you have inflation. So the scarcity, that's almost a cover-up story because it's really the medium of exchange. But the scarcity and the expense of food is affecting more and more people. Let's just talk about chocolate. Everybody likes chocolate. You like chocolate there, young man?
Yeah, Snickers. I always love a Snickers bar.
Well, guess what? Cocoa, the ingredient, the raw material, the commodity upon which the chocolate industry rests, has outpaced all major commodities in 2024 amid tightening global supplies. It has soared almost 200% this year. I think your Snickers bar is going to be taking a price increase,
Yeah.
right?
Why? Why is this happening? Why
My
is
personal
chocolate just
theory
getting more expensive?
there's supply and demand. So there's been some reasons for some shortfalls. And then you add that into the ever increasing money supply, and you get terrifying inflation.
Mm.
200%. Are you an orange juice aficionado? In your house, I'm asking you, do you like a nice glass of orange juice? Myself personally, I don't drink orange juice. I try to stay away from it, which is good for me. If you like orange juice, it's going to be tough on you because orange juice, the futures of orange juice, are up some 73% in 1 year. Wow. Orange juice. That's crazy. Food supply is being limited for all kinds of purposes. The medium of exchange is being expanded, and we've got food inflation. Do you notice food inflation when you go to the grocery store?
Yeah. I notice it with ground beef the most.
Crazy, isn't
It's
it?
crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me happy that I hunt.
You know? And then when you get this happening, you have something called food insecurity. Maybe if you're watching me, you have it. Uh, Demand at food banks all over the United States is higher than it has ever been in history. Yet our economy is working so well.
Yeah, that's what
That's
they
all
tell
we hear
us.
from the Biden administration. It's all good. But food insecurity is at all-time high. A study in the state of Washington said that 1 in 4 residents of the state are experiencing food insecurity. Poverty is on the rise in our country. That's just what it is. Here's a fact. There's a very large charity, Food Lifeline, works in the Northwest. Before the pandemic, Food Lifeline served about 800,000 people annually. During the pandemic, that number rose to 1.1 million, and it has continued increasing, reaching 1.5 million in 2023. And now this year, they're anticipating that by the end of the year, they will have served 1.7 million people. This is food insecurity and poverty growing at an exponential pace, yet our leaders are telling us everything's okay. Kind of like the Soviets. It was all good. They just lie. I mean, this is another thing. We believe lies that are so fundamental to this regime maintaining its control, like $102 trillion of global debt or $36 trillion of federal debt, or my credit cards, my student loans, my car loans, and my home loans. We just accept this because we're born into it. We don't know any different. It's such an abomination to live like this, completely unnecessary. So let's start walking back out of it. Let's start having some intentionality about our breathing. Let's start to lessen our dependency, like with well-being. Let's be well. Hey, they can't take my well-being away from me. I'm not going to let them. When I say them, I really mean me. The parts of me that are penetrated by these, not search for truth, search for lies. Things that I do that aren't good for me. I want to start walking back the things that I know are. Tanner, do you know the things you do that aren't good for you?
Yeah.
Do you still do them?
Yeah.
Let's start walking them back. I'm not going to embarrass them and ask them. It's not important. We all, every one of us, and we actually accept, and we're actually told to accept. It's okay.
Yeah.
No, it's not okay. It is going to be death at that. See, this is the thing. Death's coming anyhow. So it's like, hey, what do you got to lose? Go up, take a shot at it. There's always that dude, like the guy that's 100 years old. He lives in Brooklyn. And for the last 60 years, he's been drinking a bottle of whiskey and living on Fat Pack. And that dude's 100 years old. And he's smoking Marlboros. And everybody wants to be that dude. So everybody does that. Everybody eats crappy, does drugs, drinks. And then most of us get chronic conditions. We need to start thinking about we're in a scam. That maybe the reason they dislike Islam, I understand there's things with Islam. Please, I don't want to get into any arguments about Islam, but I'm just saying traditional culture. I don't want to get into any arguments about Judaism. Not supposed to drink, not supposed to smoke, not supposed to charge interest, supposed to have some sexual boundaries, not supposed to be lazy, supposed to love your neighbor and love yourself. And let's undo this. Let's undo this wisdom because there's no money in it. There's no money in Here's the scam. There's no money in self-governance. There's nothing to exploit. That's what you said the last episode.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, we were talking about, who is that lady up in Canada?
Chrystia Freeland.
Yeah, and she was talking about freezing bank accounts. I'm like, this right here is evidence that we need to be self-governing because this is what they'll do to us.
And I've just spent 41 minutes on a preamble going back to what Tanner talked about because our thinking is so far away from it. Let's talk about what our thinking's really focused on. Could you play the clip Wesley Clark, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, and Sudan?
Right after 9/11, about 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, don't show it to me." And I saw him a year or so ago, and I said, "You remember that?" He said, "Sir, I didn't show you that memo. I didn't show it to you."
I'm sorry, what did you say his name was?
I'm not going to give you his name.
So go through the countries again.
Well, starting with Iraq, then Syria and Lebanon, then Libya, then Somalia and Sudan, and then back to Iran. So when you look at Iran, you say, is it a replay? It's not exactly a replay, but here's the truth, that Iran from the beginning has seen that the presence of the United States in Iraq was a threat. A blessing, because we took out Saddam Hussein and the Baathists. They couldn't handle them. We took care of it for them. But also a threat because they knew that they were next on the hit list. And so, of course, they got engaged. They lost 1 million people during the war with Iraq. And they've got a long and unprotectable, unsecurable border. So it was in their vital interest to be deeply involved inside Iraq. They tolerated our attacks on the Baathists. They were happy we captured Saddam Hussein, but they're building up their own network of influence, and to cement it, they occasionally give some military assistance and training and advice, either directly or indirectly, to both the insurgents and to the militias. And in that sense, it's not exactly parallel, because there has been, I believe, continuous Iranian engagement. Some of it legitimate, some of it illegitimate. I mean, you can hardly fault Iran because they're offering to do eye operations for Iraqis who need medical attention. That's not an offense that you can go to war over, perhaps, but it is an effort to gain influence. And the administration has stubbornly refused to talk with Iran about their perception, in part because they don't want to pay the price with their our U.S. domestic political base, the right-wing base, but also because they don't want to legitimate a government that they've been trying to overthrow. If you were Iran, you'd probably believe that you were mostly already at war with the United States anyway, since we've asserted that their government needs regime change. So, and we've asked Congress to appropriate $75 million to do it, and we are supporting terrorist groups, apparently, who are infiltrating and blowing up things inside Iran. And if we're not doing it, let's put it this way, we're probably cognizant of it and encouraging it. So it's not surprising that we're moving to a point of confrontation and crisis with Iran. My point on this is not that the Iranians are good guys, they're not, but that you shouldn't use force except as a last resort. There is a military option, but it's a bad one.
I wanted to get your response to Seymour Hersh's piece in The New Yorker to two key points this week. Reporting the Pentagon's established a special planning group within the Office of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to plan a bombing attack on Iran. That this is coming as the Bush administration and Saudi Arabia are pumping money for covert operations into many areas of the Middle East, including Lebanon, Syria, and Iran, in an effort to strengthen Saudi-supported Sunni Islam groups and weaken Iranian-backed Shias. Some of the covert money has been given to jihadist groups in Lebanon with ties to al-Qaeda. Fighting the Shias by funding with Prince Bandar, and then with U.S. money not approved by Congress, funding the Sunnis connected to al-Qaeda.
Well, I don't have any direct information to confirm it or deny it. It's certainly plausible. The Saudis have taken a more active role. You know, the Saudis
you were just in Saudi Arabia. You just came back from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, well, the Saudis have basically recognized that they have an enormous stake in the outcome in Iraq, and they don't particularly trust the judgment of the United States in this area. We haven't exactly proved our competence in Iraq. So they're trying to take matters into their own hands. The real danger is, and one of the reasons this is so complicated, is because let's say we did follow the desires of some people who say, just pull out and pull out now. Well, yeah, we could mechanically do that. It would be ugly, and it might take 3 or 4 months, but you could line up the battalions on the road one by one, and you could put the gunners in the Humvees and load and cock their weapons and shoot their way out of Iraq. You'd have a few roadside bombs, but if you line everybody up, there won't be any roadside bombs, maybe some sniping. You can fly helicopters over, do your air cover, you probably get safely out of there. But when you leave, the Saudis have got to find someone to fight the Shias. Who are they going to find? Al-Qaeda. Because the groups of Sunnis who would be extremists and willing to fight would probably be the groups connected to Al-Qaeda. So one of the weird inconsistencies in this is that were we to get out early, we'd be intensifying the threat against us of a super powerful Sunni extremist group, which was now legitimated by overt Saudi funding in an effort to hang on to a toehold inside Iraq and block Iranian expansion.
That's good, Tanner. Thank you. I think we're getting the picture here. That's a General Wesley Clark. Boy, he's an impressive energy source. I don't take anything he says at surface value. I'm not saying he's a liar. I'm saying, to me, he's extraordinarily sophisticated and knowledgeable. He's very careful about what he says. Uh, the terrorists among us, he really is like stepping right in there and saying that the Saudis are funding Al Qaeda because those are the people willing to fight and die fighting the Shia. Let's just roll back the tape. Let's go back to, 1997, when I first realized that there was going to be a governmental-wide effort to confront these Sunni extremist groups that had been let loose. Who let them loose? Why were they let loose? We didn't even know. I didn't know. I was not familiar with all this tribalism. I was young. I'd never studied it. I mean, this is a tribal structure over there. And then there's two groups, Democrats and Republicans, Sunnis and Shias, and they don't like each other. It's quite evident. So, on the one hand, we have this survival of the fittest that's going on at a technological level that threatens my freedom and my safety, in my opinion. And at another level, I'm distracted into looking at this tremendous manipulation in the Middle East that goes back to the British. See, he's saying that Prince Bandar and the Saudis and this and that. No, no, no. All these governments are on one payroll. It's ours. Yes, it's we the people. The power and scope of what our government does, which is we the people, is so extensive and so it's you don't have to look for it. All you got to do is go to Wikipedia and read what the CIA wants us to know, because they want us to know a lot. It's really interesting. It's not like you go out there and you look at this manipulation in the Middle East and you can't find anything. Oh, you could read forever on all the papers, PhDs that have commented on this, that, thus, and so about how we've manipulated. You go back to the British before that. This area, this Middle East area, which is on that line of conflict from the Ukraine down to Gaza, you could say it's the same line of conflict. I do, in fact, say, because it's a straight line. It's a rip in the force. It's where the Eastern Alliance and the Western Alliance, that's the demarcating line. And they say, when you go back and read, the CIA did this to confront communism, or that to fight. They were never fighting communism. That was an ideology that they used as a cover story. It was marketing. They were fighting the Russians and the Chinese, the great cultural battles that have gone on this globe from time immemorial. The Chinese, the Russians, and the Anglo-Saxons, as Putin calls the American-British cartel. These are the warring tribes here now. And it is tribal, and it's really important, I think, for those of us that want to search for truth, that want to see a country where we love our neighbors as we wish to be loved, that we want to operationalize republicanism, that we recognize how unrepublican we've been. The Republican idea, like the Irish Republican Army, it was a repudiation of the British business model. The whole point of it was to fight that business model. Yet here it is, it won. Why? Because the best way to control the opposition is to lead it. And the British have done a great job of it through our universities. Now, we're talking about the CIA and manipulation and the terrorists among us. Let's talk about a famous skullduggerous character, the often mentioned Saddam Hussein. You know, I was writing all these things out about Saddam's relationship with the U.S. government going back to day one. And then I found a video. I'm just going to read the captions in this video. And, for those of you that have a video feed, you'll be able to see the pictures, so you get a little flavor like that. And then if you're on audio only, I'm going to read to you what's going on here. Just play this one, CIA asset Saddam Hussein. This video contains graphic content and is not suitable for children. We're not going to go that far. Pictures of Saddam Hussein. He was born, a handsome young man. And in 1959, after a failed attempt on the life of Iraqi President General Qasem, he flees to Egypt. In Cairo, Hussein repeatedly visits the U.S. Embassy and he meets with CIA agents interested in the downfall of Qasem. He gets an apartment directly across the street from Qasem's office in the Iraq's Ministry of Defense to observe his movements. And in 1963, Qasem is assassinated in the first Ba'athist coup. The United States recognizes the Ba'athists, who we originally, they were on our payroll. The CIA gave 800 names of communists to the Ba'athists. They killed them. The security aide to President Kennedy called this a positive. There's two more CIA-backed Ba'athist coups. This is CIA-backed in Iraq, going back into the 50s and 60s, opening the country to Western business. The final Ba'athist coup brings Ahmed Hassan al-Bakr to power, who places his cousin Saddam Hussein in charge of the security apparatus. In 1979, Saddam pushes out his cousin, and he takes over all political control and liquidates all of his opponents. The incoming Reagan administration sees Iran as a threat, cuts a deal with Iraq, encourages an invasion. In addition to encouraging that invasion, the United States, we the people, armed the Iraq government with all kinds of biological and chemical weapons. That's why we knew they had weapons of mass destruction. We gave it to them. Saddam Hussein was supporting international terrorism. He was on our payroll. He was supporting terrorists. That means he was a conduit for terrorism. They used these U.S.-supplied chemical weapons against the Iranians. Here's a picture of Don Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense, shaking hands with Saddam Hussein. Iran and Iraq fought a war for 8 years. Over 1 million lives were lost. It bankrupted Iraq. After the war, Iraq's ally Kuwait flooded the world market with oil, lowered the price, put the hardship on Saddam Hussein. That was probably also orchestrated in the United States. It undercut the Iraq effort to rebuild its economy. He talked to the United States about his plans to invade Kuwait, to give them what for what they were doing, and we, the United States, have no opinion on your border dispute with Kuwait. James Baker has instructed the official spokesman to emphasize this instruction. So Saddam thought he got a green light to invade Kuwait, and he does so. Bush administration immediately reneges on its assurances and begins preparations for war. Something was going on here that was quite spooky. Iraq offers to withdraw in exchange for a Middle East peace conference. That was ignored. There was a war, the first Gulf War. Then we had the World Trade Center issue in 9/11. Using this as a pretext, the Bush administration lost the second war against Saddam Hussein. Millions of people, of course, die. The Middle East is destabilized. 40-year veteran CIA asset Saddam Hussein was captured, turned over by an undisclosed group to U.S. occupying forces.
This is Judgment Day for Saddam Hussein. The verdict is in, guilty as charged, and the sentence is death by hanging. We want you to hear an exchange now between Hussein and the Iraqi judge in the courtroom during the sentencing. Here it is.
Stand up. We will read the verdict. Stand up. Yes? You listen to the verdict. I can't listen to the verdict. Stand up. No, I want to stay. I want to sit down.
يلا جوزوا منا لا تطويل جوزوا منا هو واقف جوزوا منا
Move away from him.
جوزوا منا هذه قاعدة حكي وياك.
The court has
قررت المحكمة
sentenced the defendant Saddam Hussein al-Majid
حسين المجيد
to
بالإعدام
execution
شرطاً حتى الموت لارتكاب قتل عمد كجريمة
by hanging. Long live the people, down with the traitors.
بدلالة المادة
God is great. God is great. God is great.
قانون المحكمة الجنائية
God is great.
رقم 10 لسنة 2005 وحددت
The punishment is according to the law. Long live the people.
من قانون العقوبات
Down with the traitors. Down with the conquerors.
بدلالة المادة 24 من قانون المحكمة الجنائية العراقية العليا رقم 10 لسنة 2005
Damn you and your court.
حضوريا وبالاتفاق.
The last scene of this, if you want to go look for it, is his execution. This goes back to the CIA involvement. The point is, we the people. The CIA is us. They don't want to admit that, but their funding, their legitimacy, and their education is provided by we, us, me. It's me. This is like debt. Debt. We accept this as the way it is. It's absolutely insane. It's psychotic to have this kind of level of debt that enslaves the people. We're in a matrix. We accept this. We also accept that our government could intervene into the affairs of a sovereign nation for the good of who? It's not for the good of me. I don't own Bechtel. I don't own Exxon. I don't even want the stock. And they opened the Iraq concession with the British and the Persian concession to extract the oil. And they manipulated these countries. And let's think about, well, how do they do that? Why are they so successful? These countries have a different kind of culture and political organization than we do here. We don't understand it. It's far from our thinking. These are tribal structures. They don't have institutions and institutional methods to govern their societies. Those are graft-ons. The core of it is tribal. So you have a strong man, the leader of the tribe, like Saddam Hussein. He led the Takritis. It was a family deal, like a gang. What matters in that kind of environment is strength, the strength to rule. There is an institutional procedure to moderate power. It is there to exacerbate and intensify power. You know, like we're starting to go through here, the way some of our processes are being weaponized. No, this is an environment where people are prone to take bribes and make alliances to make themselves stronger so that they can rule. And Saddam Hussein was involved with the CIA very early on. That was a picture, if you saw the video, he's shaking hands with Don Rumsfeld, who was the Secretary of Defense during the Second Gulf War. I mean, these people were involved and knew each other, and they were being armed by our country to fight Iran, which at the same time, Iran suffered tremendous United States intervention. They had a guy, this goes back to the 50s. They have all this oil there. British Petroleum was formed to extract that oil, BP. There was an elected president there, a guy named Mossadegh, who was a Democrat. He was almost, you could say, a Republican, and our CIA went out of its way to brand him as a communist and as a self-promoter so that they could remove him because he was trying to renegotiate the split between the West and Iran on the oil revenue. Iran was only getting 16 points. They wanted to at least get up. The Saudis were already up at 50, so they were trying to just get to the world standard. They wanted half the action. And they took this guy and they deposed him. When I say they, I mean we. It was called Operation Ajax. We were involved in this country from the 50s. I mean, we took over from the British. We worked with the British. You take all these countries on this list that Wesley Clark talks about, Iran, CIA, stomping ground. In the Reagan era, we had the Iran-Contra scandal. I mean, it just continues right to this day. The Stuxnet virus, the assassinations of Iranian nuclear physicists in the country, the death of Hamas leadership in Tehran. This is all run here. Here, it's us. We're doing it. This idea we're going to blame it on the Israelis, no, they're involved. They're integrated. They're interoperable. Nothing happens without the boss saying yes. And when something happens that the boss doesn't plan on, the boss uses it for their advantage because they've got that intermediary fiat currency of exchange. They're running the deal. It's the bank. Iran, Iraq, Lebanon. Come on, look at Lebanon. It's a failed state. Syria, another failed state. These states were failed. Why were they failed? What kind of policy creates this kind of failure? And we're blaming it. We blame it on the Africans and on the Arabs. That's our thing. I mean, I read it on X all the time. They have very low IQ. They're very low IQ people. It's all their fault that we're able to manipulate them, make them hate each other and hate themselves, arm both sides, put them at war so we can extract natural resources and control the region with a very minimal number of people. That's what we're doing over there. And we accept this. My point is not to repeat what you already know, but to focus on the fact that we accept this, that this survival of the fittest, this evolutionary impulse, which is leading us to a superintelligence, has already operated in a very psychopathic fashion for hundreds of years, destabilizing large parts of the planet. I mean, the Chinese have expelled the West. We had China and India as screwed up and is at war with itself as the Middle East and Africa is now. Those are the last two areas where Western influence is unfettered. There's still Western influence in China and India, but it's ideological now. It's not raw exploitation. In fact, those two countries are fighting back. They've joined an organization, formed an organization together, BRICS. Brazil, former Portuguese colony. Russia, at war with the West constantly in modern history since 1805. Russia, India, British colony, right? China, partitioned by many European powers. South Africa, part of the Commonwealth, right? British. These people reject and resent us for exploiting their people and creating chaos there so we could rob them. And we believe we're there to protect our freedom. That's what we're told. We're protecting democracy. We're there to spread democracy. And we believe this? This is as BS as believing this debt is good for me. This is called, there's the debt part, and then there's the military part, and these two things are working in common. Is it any surprise that assets that were brought into the Western way by the CIA and then recognized that they were being used possibly became more nationalistic and anti-Western, or perhaps they used the West to achieve their goals at the start because they were also users, just like the West was using them, and they emerged, got on top of the game, and started to work to expel the United States and the British and the French from the Middle East, or from China or from Africa. Is there any surprise to this? Well, no, but we never thought about it. I mean, we've never really come to grips with, as a people, what was going on in the universities in the 1970s, which was looking at colonialism and what it did to societies, both the colonizer and the colonized. We just have lost that academic rigor because it was on to who's to blame for this. And what the powers that be saw these academics, these communist academics, as being a threat. So they put them on the payroll. And they convinced these academics to stop talking about the British business model and just let's call it white people. Pretty good work, isn't it? I mean, don't blame us. It's because we're white. And then they did an Immelman, which is a aerial dogfight move, and came around behind us and said, hey, we're going to have to import all these people to create equity. And then they wrecked the very societies and when I say they, I mean the globalists. They're wrecking the very societies that brought them to where they are because they've got so much wealth now because of that medium of exchange that they control that they don't need governments or countries or peoples. They're supranational. They don't need humanity. And that's what we're living through. That's why I'm saying we talk about debt. We talk about all these wars and the CIA and Russia and every one of these countries, Sudan, Somalia, Lebanon, Syria. We have been involved in these countries. I could do a podcast on every one of these countries, the activities that we the people have peddled in those countries. The latest being this Al Giolani, who is the head of this HTS group, this Al-Qaeda affiliate that now surprisingly was a surprise. Oh, sure it was. That's what they say it was a surprise. It wasn't a surprise. It was a plan. And the plan worked, and now Bashar al-Assad has been run out of Syria, and the Syrian part of the Eastern Alliance has been captured by our boys, the terrorists. They're terrorists. But they've always been on our payroll. And he says, I'm not a danger to you people. And he's not. He's a danger to the Shia. What we're doing right now is exploiting the hatreds between the Sunnis and the Shia and the Kurds, keeping these people fighting with each other because they're in a tribal structure and managing their tribe is their primary concern. It doesn't take a lot of money to do that. Man, some Stinger missiles and 50 million, and these boys are good to go. And that's what we've done over there. And the Israelis are part of it, and the Turks are part of it. And what are we really fighting? Well, we're fighting the Russians and the Chinese, but it's a diversion. We're being diverted from the real fight, which is for our own personal freedoms, for my own freedom. They're saying, man, you got to give up your freedom. There's terrorists. My God, you've got to have your phone surveilled. We got to have your travel monitored. I mean, because there's terrorists among us. I mean, we're at threat. We're at danger here. You must let us pass the Patriot Act and then reaffirm it again and again and again, which allows the government to curtail our privacy, our freedoms, our freedom of speech. This kind of a broadcast. I don't wish any of these people any harm. Their narrative's fallen apart. It's what are they going to do as their narrative dissolves into mush? Because I'm not accepting this. Tanner, do you think it's okay that we the people are involved all over the world subverting the free will of the people about how they want to self-govern? Is it? But it's a complete reversal of the Atlantic Charter, which the Lion of the Left, Franklin Roosevelt, made Churchill support, and a key pillar of that was the self-determination of all peoples. And as soon as we got that ensconced so that the British were forced to give up their colonies, we took it over and went about the same thing that the British had did. It's rebranding. It's no different than David Hand making sure that Alex Plekish became the new leader of the NGOP. It's the same thing. Or Tim Burchett saying, I think I got played. Politics is theater. It's theater. The only thing that's not theater is my freedom, because it's a right granted to me by my Creator. I have the freedom to create my life, to pursue my life, to have my freedom. I have that as that, and this is where the rubber really hits the road. What does the scientific technocracy seek above all else is the destruction of traditional culture. The destruction of the search for truth. They're the science, they're the truth. They're an element of the truth. They're not necessarily wrong about many of the things that they have added to our discourse. But they're not the whole picture. They want to be the whole picture because they don't want me to self-govern. They don't want you to be self-governing. In fact, I don't think they want us alive. I mean, I'm in that camp where I think that when I see all this money spent on healthcare and life expectancies are falling and birth rates have collapsed all over the world, so that for the first time since the Black Plague, world population's in the decline. I mean, somebody doesn't want this to work. Something is working against population and the expansion of humanity. And they say that there's not enough natural resources to go around. They say that. But we have all this technology that's deployed for killing people in our universities. Our universities stand on the funding of research that's aimed at killing people. If all that money was deployed to research into how to really solve problems, not perpetuate them, solve them, there's no money in a solved problem. That's why the same problems exist today that existed since I've been younger than Tanner. And they tell me because they're intractable. They're intractable problems. They're not intractable problems. They're not solved because they're profitable for the people that are on both sides of the football. And that becomes the uni-party. There's no effort to solve any problems.
A great example of this is California. They put, I think it was a $40 billion. I think it was 2019 is when this started. They put about $40 billion to help with homelessness. And since that initiative started, homelessness has gotten worse. And about 10 billion of that 40 or yeah, about 10 billion of that is missing, just unaccounted for. No clue where it came from. Homelessness is worse. And now they're back asking for more money to be allocated towards the homelessness issue. And I'd figured this out just talking with my friend about this very thing, that there's some problems that will never be fixed because it is their sales pitch. If they fix it, they won't be able to do it. We see that with climate change, homelessness issue. I mean, the list kind of goes on.
Forever wars.
Yeah.
Forever wars. The greatest reason to have a forever war is our deep and abiding, our deep spiritual, religious, and cultural relationship with our number one ally, Israel. The 15 million people there that are outnumbered by 1 billion people that got this tiny little sliver of land, the only democratic nation in the Middle East. That you've heard that before. They're the only democratic nation in the Middle East, our ally. And that place has been at war continuously since the day after Israel was founded. They declared their independence, and the next day they were attacked on all sides. And now, hey, Netanyahu, we're being attacked on 7 fronts. So it's the same thing that's gone on since the late 40s, since 49, 48. all these years of continuous war can't be solved. Because, hey, man, can't solve the debt problem, can't solve the famine problem, can't solve the disease problem. We can't solve any problems. But science is the answer. Does that sound like a contradiction to you? I mean, we have the means now to solve every problem because of the scientific method, because of our genius, the genius of artificial intelligence. We can solve every problem. Every problem. Life can be so much better. You know, life is materially better. Uh, Life expectancies are longer if you compare them with certain periods. Um, but we're going around a curve here. We're getting on the downside of this thing. And I think for myself personally, knowing that every day is a blessing, I want to work on my self-governance just for me. I mean, I'm going to tell you, this is how I think about it. I want to be self-governing. I don't want to be dependent. I would like to be interdependent with my family to the extent that everybody can grow in my family to deal with it. I mean, these issues can be solved. Some people have to lead. They have to say, what is republicanism? Republicanism is rights that are granted to me by a creator and my pursuit of my life and my liberty and my happiness interdependent with other human beings at my discretion. In other words, if I don't want to be involved with other human beings, I'm not to be labeled somehow psychologically deficient. I choose not to. Don't label me and create a disease class because I'm a loner. Or conversely, if I'm very social, please don't make a bunch of disease classes over here because of my behavior. These people are profiting off. It doesn't matter what direction you go. There's money in it as long as it's not right. I can't fix the whole thing. I'd like to. And I'll tell you how I think it gets fixed. I'm going to fix myself. You fix yourself. You fix yourself. Let's start walking towards self-governance. Let's make it a social imperative, a cultural imperative. How can I self-govern a little more today? The place where it really needs to go down is health and well-being. That'd be a great one right there. We don't need the government to take care of everything for everybody. Do we? They seem to think so, right? The budget's $6.2 trillion. What's $6.2 trillion divided by 350 million? Figure that one out.
Let me pull out my calculator real quick.
Because I want to see what my end of the action is. Because I don't think I got a check in the mail. This is a meandering after Christmas appeal to myself, to you, to look at how we are believing things in this matrix. This matrix, because it's just a good metaphor. And I know I see Andrew Tate uses it. It's a great metaphor. We have cultural beliefs we don't understand, can't see, and we operate out of them like being in debt. I don't want to be in debt, period. And I don't want it for you. I want to be able to run 100 yards. And I want you to be able to do it too. And there's a lot of citizens that cannot do it. Man, that's an important skill. I'd like to be able to touch my toes. I would like to be able to sit quietly for a half hour and just sit, just be relaxed. There's a lot of things that we can do to self-govern. Did you get it?
You need to repeat the numbers to me. I'm sorry.
6.2 trillion
Okay.
divided by 350 million. See if that comes up with AI.
Yeah. About 17 point. Sorry, I'm really bad at reading numbers. $17,714.
That means that if we divided up the spoils of the $6.2 trillion, and it was returned to the people equally, we all would have gotten checks for $17,000. Did you get a check?
No.
I didn't either. I paid in. My point being, we accept this. We accept this. We accept a $6.2 trillion budget. And there's nothing going on to change it. They just passed another continuing resolution, which just continues it. My first goal, live within my means. That's self-governing. Don't borrow money. This is me. I'm just giving you my inventory. I don't want to borrow money. I'm not going to borrow money. For my personal life, I'm going to run my personal life par. Okay, that's it. I'm going to try to be physically, spiritually, intellectually self-governing. I'm going to try to enhance my well-being. If I just did those two things, and if every person in the society did it simultaneously, if it became culturally appropriate, culturally demanded that nobody had credit cards, there wouldn't be any credit cards. There'd be no demand for them. Do you know how much money these people make with these credit cards? The profit margin of MasterCard and Visa, those companies, they have 50% profit margins. Their market control is so phenomenal that you can take a self-governing private citizen's business, has a small business, a shopkeeper, and they're going to give 2.5% of their profit to Visa or MasterCard. And you ask them, why would you do that? That doesn't seem to work for you. They go, well, I have to think of my customer, and the customer demands it. That's us. If we only worked with cash, for example, if we got rid of our credit cards, all that interest would go away, all that dependency would go away. We could set ourselves free of plastic, which for the obvious environmental issues has some viability. Why don't we think this way? I don't know why. Maybe nobody talks about it. Maybe we should spread a cultural imperative, no more credit cards.
I get a little scared that we're in a situation where, we're kind of wrapping it up with the how we need to take a step back to self-governance. I get very fearful that we're not able to. And the only way that the step back will happen is that we're forced to step back. And that's through some kind of collapse of something. You kind of look at Rome, and that's kind of evident in that scenario.
Well, that's what we're talking about. We're saying we can do this proactively or reactively. It's up to us. The power that we have as individual people, for example, to pray, to meditate, to work on well-being, to reduce our debt, to start to be more real in every way that we can, to walk when we could drive. For example, if you got a 3-block deal you got to do, why don't you walk there? I mean, when we start to think like, okay, I'm going to walk up the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Just little things like that are huge things for our well-being and just for our independence. I mean, we're in this office building, Tanner and I, and we got to come in. I take the stairs, you take the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
You see people taking that elevator, don't you?
So many.
It's crazy.
I chuckled to myself. I'm like, it's one flight of stairs.
It's one flight of stairs, and they get in the elevator. I mean, I get it. But, this kind of dependency, we're going to have to turn this around. We're going to have to turn it around individually. And this seems a little quixotic to me to talk like this. It is the day after Christmas. I'm letting myself go. We're a lot of us are friends. I'm just sharing my trepidations, just as Tanner's. We didn't pre-plan this. I have my own trepidations. How do I walk back out of, this kind of thing? And I think we're going to have to do it. I mean, if we really want to save the republic and save our freedom, we're going to have to do this. And if we don't do it, and all of our freedoms are gone down the road, what are you going to say? I mean, you're not going to say anything. Your freedom's gone. It's our dependence, our growing dependence that we accept in every area of our life It's just, it's the fruit and it's the positive and the negative in one spot. It's the benefit and the cost in one spot. Let's look at it. Let's balance out. Boy, if we just took a half hour for prayer, quiet time, letting it could be almost anything you wanted to do that you could, if you had a tear in your garment, get a sewing kit and sew it up yourself. It's that simple. It's really just that simple. Change your own uh, washer fluid in your. I mean, I change my own washer fluid for my car, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't do that anymore. They get their fluids changed. I mean, come on, it's a nothing thing to do. We're not even talking about changing your own oil.
Yeah, see, I gotta get better at that, but that's the lack of space. And that's why it gets so difficult. This is so nuanced because everything kind of plays off of each other. You find yourself in scenarios that it's
I'm trying to put some sand in the gears here to say that for me, I'm going to take more time to do the things I can do and not be so busy and not be seeking convenience so much. You know, the intentionality of walking. Here's a bizarre one. Do you pay attention when you walk to your posture? That's very self-governing. Do you have good posture? Can you feel as if your head's pulled up from heaven by a string? Do you feel your abdominal muscles? Do you feel your big toe? I mean, that's self-governance. You're ready to move. It's cool. It feels good. So please, tolerate this episode. We're the day after Christmas in the sense that I'm just playing with the possibility of how I can motivate all of us, myself, all of us, to govern ourselves. Because in the space where we're not, we got $100 trillion of global debt and a military industrial complex that's messing with everything everywhere, but not to benefit me. Hey, if they were doing it to benefit me, it'd be a moral issue. Okay? I mean, I'd say, come on. No, I don't really want to do this. It's not moral. But right now, it's just a dumb issue. I'm paying for a huge infrastructure to manipulate the entire world and not for my benefit. I'm just being used. It doesn't even reach the level of morality. It reaches the level of, hey, quit playing me. Get off of my blue suede shoes now. Please. Okay, this isn't going to work anymore. We the people don't want to be used by a small group of oligarchs and their minions who are playing a great power game for their own amusement because they're bored. Go do something else, okay, guys? We know who you are. We know your names. We know your structure. We know your play. The people are getting it together. You have no future with this game. The only future you have is walk off the stage, and as far as I'm concerned, I'd let you go. Or destroy everything because you're just a bunch of spoiled children, and when you lose, you tip over the Monopoly board. Make a choice now. You're either going to be the people that just destroy everything because your PhD isn't worth jack, okay? Hey, it didn't work. The scam didn't work. You're just going to destroy everything because the scam didn't work. Okay, go ahead. Or live, and I'll be the proponent of, we got to let these people go someplace. I mean, we don't have to put all of them in jail. I'm not a proponent of that. I'm a proponent of we the people getting into the power positions and setting up the country so it's about well-being, and all these scams and BS stories. Let's just reject them. Sounds rather quixotic, and for the day after Christmas and between Christmas and New Year's, I have a right, I think, to pull on the rope as hard as I can for what I see. I don't expect a political leader to emerge in the next cycle that says we're ending all credit cards. That's not the way things work. There's a demand for credit cards. Let's end the demand, and the credit cards will go away. We have to understand that the convenience of the credit card is enslaving us into digital currency. There's nothing real about it. It's unreality upon unreality. Let's just kill the demand. Hey, let's kill the demand for drugs. Just kill the demand. I feel good. I don't need any drugs. Wouldn't that be cool? I don't hate the Chinese. There's no reason for this. I don't hate the Russians. I don't hate. It's not about the Russians and the Chinese. It's about me. I don't hate. Let's end the addiction to hate. In fact, you could take a list of 7 things, 7 deadly sins, and you could pretty much categorize everything that's wrong, and let's just give up our addiction to those sins. And it's not up to the government. They're not governing this. They're exploiting our addiction to these sins. What a bunch of nice people. Think about the people who we empower to phenomenal wealth, who would get that wealth and power by exploiting our addiction to deadly sins. Just on that basis alone, could we change our culture? I'll start by changing my personal culture. I hope you start by changing your personal culture. And if we're quixotic, we are. But it has to start somewhere. This movement has to start somewhere. It's not about, electric vehicles. It's not about war in the Ukraine. It's not about poverty or famine or inflation. Those things are taking our eyes off the ball because they're so important. But the real issue is our own choices, which, of course, we're told we're little people and it doesn't matter. Right?
Mhm.
Really, my choices don't matter. I'm just a grain of sand. Well, thank God for Christmas. I hope you had a good Christmas again, and we're going to have New Year's next week. We'll see you next Tuesday. What's our schedule next week? Are we going to do Tuesday and Thursday? Tuesday is I think it's New Year's Eve.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, we should be good then. I don't know, guys. You let us know down below if you guys would be watching, because if everybody has plans for New Year's Eve, let us know, and we'll base it off of that.
And then we'll do a Thursday night. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe that's the play.
Okay. Let
Is
us know down
everybody
below.
going out for New Year's this year? That's an interesting question. Are you going out for New Year's, young
I
man?
don't know what my plans are. I think I'm gonna try to go out snowboarding during New Year's Day, but I don't. Yeah.
Well, we've had a very kind of, in a sense, groundbreaking podcast. I really didn't put a lot of time into where I was going to go with this. But I mean, in the sense that I know what I want to accomplish, I just don't know how to motivate other people to do it. That's the great challenge, right? And Christ was a miracle that happened to our people that motivated people for hundreds, thousands of years. And now we're living in a time where forces are trying to snuff that out. So, short of the return, it's incumbent upon each one of us to seek uh, decisions and actions which finish the job of creating this world. It's up to us until further notice. And let us understand how easy it is to do. We just need to understand the things in our own lives that we do that we know we shouldn't do, and then try to figure out how to work out of it, recognizing it's very difficult to do so. Whatever the flat spot is, that's where we go. Whatever we don't want to talk about, that's what we talk about. Whatever we seek to avoid, that's what we go for. Whatever terrifies us, that's what we have to deal with. With that spirit, I'm going to wish you a good weekend. Looking forward to your feedback on the New Year's show. Have a great weekend. Be well. Tanner, Thanks very much. Do we have any music to go out with tonight?
Yeah, it looks like we got some Price Party. Price Party Up.
Prince.
Yeah.
There's a
Is there a typo there? Sorry. So,
oh no, it's Prince.
okay.
Is there a viewer's name there too?
Yep. Victor.
Victor. Thank you, Victor. Victor asked that we go out with this really cool piece of music by Prince, and we will do so. Have a good night, everyone.